Hey guys, I'm Imy and I'm here with Tay and Stuart, and we're going to go through Operation The Case of the Digital Double. A new customer has opened an account and quickly begun making suspicious transactions. On the surface, everything looks legitimate. Valid ID, known device, usual IP, but something doesn't quite add up. We need experts to find out whether this new customer is a synthetic ID or not. Emma Richardson is a newly onboarded customer at bank. Emma first created an account with the bank on October the 20th, 2025. First logged in October 21st, 2025, and first made a payment the same day, within 4 minutes of login. Reset her password the following day, and then made a second transfer attempt also that same day. I'm now going to go through some behavioural clues. Clue number 1. Outbound payments to remittance services that appear domestic, UK sort codes, but are actually routed abroad.
Sounds like a red flag, just because obviously these are the routes that fraudsters typically take to send money out of the country. I mean, it has a UK sort code, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's staying within the UK.
So we look at clue number 2 then. So 3 new beneficiaries were set up immediately before any money has been credited to the account.
Looks like 3 potential mules.
It does. So it's not, I mean, when you also factor in the timeline, the account is opened one day and then the very next day this particular participant has forgotten their password. There's session history there that suggests, opening an account and then immediately forgetting it. Well, your password and your credentials seems a bit unusual as well.
And clue number 3, the session showed copy-paste behaviour in the password field, suggesting credential stuffing.
Feels like someone's potentially opened this account or something's opened this account, and then, things like passwords, which should be known to legitimate owners of their account, would be typed as opposed to copy-pasted.
I feel like in the pattern of all the red flags, the password reset's probably the thing that takes me back to maybe it is a real person. Because I think you set up so many accounts and you don't necessarily have track of all the passwords. And so it wouldn't be unusual for somebody to sign up to Bank A and then use their password manager, for instance, to copy and paste something from Bank B, thinking that that's the right answer. That's the risk signal that tells me that maybe it is a real person and you've just kind of lost track because you've only set it up the day before.
From a digital trust perspective, we would be differentiating copy-paste behaviors. So having a product that can actually look at the behavioral biometrics and the fact that copy-paste has occurred as opposed to like an autofill or an autocomplete, which would be associated with the password manager, we might be able to make that distinction.
I think also understanding who the beneficiaries are, because I mean, if you set up a bank account and your 3 beneficiaries are your own accounts, family accounts, or whatever, then that might seem legitimate. Obviously, when you've not credited your own account first, which is typically what people do when you go through the flow, it usually says, okay, now you've got a bank account, add some money to said bank account. So I guess there are 2 ways to look at it in terms of legitimacy.
So the next clues are biometric clues. So clue number 1, the typing rhythm is inconsistent with historical patterns. So a shorter dwell time, faster pressure.
We've been told there's shorter dwell times. So that's talking about how long I spend pressing a key down on my software keyboard if I'm on a mobile device, which could suggest some sort of automation, like a bot. And if we look at clue 2, there's even more kind of evidence towards that theory. We're told the device grip sensor shows lower accelerometer variance than usual. So all of a sudden, how this particular device, this mobile phone, is being held, it doesn't give off the same sort of physical sensor feedback that you would expect from a real world interaction. If I hold my mobile phone today and I push down on it, the phone goes backwards and forwards with the pressure of how I'm interacting with it. The fact that it's maybe more static from a sensor position could suggest this is an emulated device or not a real physical device, or indeed the interaction that's coming against that device is automated in some way.
The next section has device clues. So clue number 1 is that the device ID changed between login and payment. Clue number 2 is that the screen resolution switched from mobile to desktop. And clue number 3 is that the device language changed from English UK to a language from a country Emma has no obvious connection to.
I guess the change in device ID could be seen as suspicious. It could also be that they're logging in from, I don't know, their iPad or something else.
I think clue number 3 shows a greater risk.
I mean, but does it? Because does it not reinforce the fact that the first payment was to a remittance provider or organisation? then maybe they do have links to a different country, whether that's through work or what nationality. We've got none of that information.
Yeah, I mean, it says that Emma has no obvious connection to it, but I guess the point is no obvious connection, and we actually don't have that much information about Emma at this stage. The next clues are IP and location clues. So clue number 1, Emma has logged in from London and then made a transaction from Bucharest within 12 minutes. Clue number 2, the IP is linked to a VPN hosting provider. And clue number 3 is that the ISP metadata is flagged for botnet activity.
I think where you would get more suspicious is based upon the different characteristics of that VPN. From a digital trust perspective, we can look at, some of the qualities of that VPN. Is it actually trying to anonymize itself as a VPN provider? But I think probably the key one here was in clue 3 that Emmy said, where the ISP metadata is flagged it for botnet activity, which does suggest, again, it's got a history of kind of abusive activity.
Okay, customer history file. So we've been provided a brief background on Emma Richardson. She's got a normal phone number, an ID of a driver's license which has been validated. She has what looks like very thin credit history, multiple accounts open but no utilization of credit, and 1 address on file. And her social media presence is that she has recently created a LinkedIn with only 12 connections and no photos. And her employer had its domain registered only last month. What are the red flags here?
What aren't the red flags here, right? So what additional information should banks be getting right at the beginning that will kind of save them all the trouble of having to go through all of this in the first place?
Well, I assume some of that information that we've been given there has used external data to perform that check. So where we've got a valid driver's license, I'm assuming the address and the phone number have been checked. Like, are these real? Is this a legitimate phone number? Which there are external providers that you can use to check that.
And it's funny that obviously we've been given all these clues right at the end. And I feel like that's usually not necessarily always the case, but especially when you go into banking fraud operations, ops will look at Google Maps to see where the address is. Is it like a business? Is it a whole bunch of mule accounts registered to a takeout or whatever? So obviously, if we'd have been given this information right at the beginning, just having that thin credit file would obviously lead us to suspect that, okay, it's very unusual that we wouldn't have more data having onboarded a customer.
Equally, from a digital trust perspective, at the point of account opening, so even prior to doing any of the third-party checks, you could equally be looking for some risks in channel during the application process, just from a behavior perspective, from a device posturing perspective, from an automation perspective, which, if any of them raise a flag, is actually going to save you money from maybe doing potentially more expensive third-party data checks, verification checks, documentation checks.
It looks like we've reviewed all of the clues. So it's time for us to determine, is this a real customer or a fraudster using a synthetic identity?
So I think unanimously, we think it's a synthetic ID, right?
Yeah.
Given kind of the multi-layer of risk signals that we've seen.
Really, any clues that tell us this customer isn't a legitimate customer, but when you implement the right tooling like digital trust, when you use feed-side orchestration solution and bring in external data feeds and insights that you don't have currently on that customer, you can actually determine that it is likely to be a synthetic customer. And I've got these 3, 5, 10 red flags that make us believe that.
As much as it's key for capturing what doesn't look right and what doesn't look legitimate, it's also really key in saying, okay, this is the customer. We've obviously, in this case, just seen inconsistent patterns.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you see the reverse of that, where everything seems consistent, but the payment might seem slightly anomalous? And that gives you a case to kind of reduce your false positives as well, because it may be a payment for a particular reason or to a really trusted beneficiary. And then you can kind of rule that out automatically.
Mm.
So I think it works in both ways, but I think ultimately it's the digital trust signals that really hone in on this being a fraudulent identity.
So we're in agreement. Fraud.
I think it's fraud.